Every month we have a theme at CSL. This month's theme is Inclusion in Action. And our weekly theme, Colorblind or Colorful. Wow, that's quite a subject. And I had to think about this. Am I ready to talk about it? And I'm not sure where to jump in. So, like when that happens to me, my mind wanders. Oh, can we lighten this up? So maybe I should start with a joke. And no, wait, I can't make a joke about being colorblind. That would be insensitive. Okay, colors, coloring. Okay, so my mind went to crayons. Crayons are safe. I can talk about crayons. So here's what I found. Do you know which crayon is the sharpest? Red, because it can draw blood. Did you know why the crayon was crying? He was feeling blue. I thought I saw a new color in my crayon box, but it was just a pigment of my imagination. And then I asked Rob, I said, how do programmers organize their crayons? He told me clearly, they color code them. And so why did the elephant paint itself lots of different colors? So that it could hide in the crayon box. Did you ever see an elephant in a crayon box? See, it worked. But still there is this question, colorblind or colorful? And when have I been colorblind? When have I been blind to anything? And when have I been colorful? When have I been full of that life? That is the life that we know as one life, one energy, one light. Colorblind. It's a topic that I am just becoming more aware of. I'm struggling to gain a deeper awareness of this. And I invite you to join me, not so much in the struggle, but on the journey to awareness. See, I've not had to think much about racism. Sure, I've known bad things happen, racism, school shootings, bombings, violence, all this exists, but it's not happening in my living room. After all, I'm a religious scientist. I live in a bubble of peace and prosperity. And in this, I am privileged. I'm privileged to avoid looking any further than my own aura. Until now. See, as we've been confined, my world has gotten spatially smaller, but I'm set the intention to go deeper. I should warn you about this. What you intend changes your life. So I can't count the times I've heard about an act of violence. We've all heard them. And I wanted to do something to stop the oppression, but I didn't know where to begin. So I've always remained silent. Silent because I've been afraid of making mistakes. Afraid of saying the wrong thing or offending people. Oh, heavens. Let's just stay on the light side. Anyhow, what can I do to make a difference? What can I do to make a difference? And the voice in my head reminds me of my early training in Bible school. Matthew 25, verse 40. Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of these, the least of these, my brethren, you did for me. Okay, so I want to be on that path. So I made a note to myself. I said, you have to match the conscious mind with the conscious spirit. Oh my. Have you ever gone down an internet rabbit hole? You ask Google a simple question, and it leads to a page which leads to a video, and you're off on a 3-hour cruise, which may just end up on Gilligan's Island. So I did that. I said, okay, what colors can the eye see? Which led to, what colors can dogs see? And how does the eye work? And how are insect eyes different? And what about spider eyes? And you know how this goes. Before I knew it, hours had passed. And then ads began to show up on my social media and search feeds about vitamins to improve your vision, color blindness tests, contact lens, not to mention pest control. Spiders, you know. Everywhere I looked online, my reality began to shift and my focus narrowed. On the surface, the shift seemed, well, harmless, other than, of course, the hours wasted. And then I remember the answer that's given in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, 42. And the thing is, the quality of our life is determined by the quality of the questions we ask. And while there's truth in this statement, the quality of the question, there's also another piece to that. Whom we question and how well we listen also matters. So, if the search for truth and meaning is an important part of my spiritual life, then I need to ask the important, uncomfortable, and scary questions, or I won't get to larger and deeper truths. Oh, and by the way, I need to listen. So this week I listened to a talk by a CSL minister in Oakland, California by the name of Derica Blackman. In fact, I listened to it twice. One thing she said was, if you are evolved in consciousness, you are involved in change. And again, I refer to my early Presbyterian upbringing. Faith without works is dead. If you are evolved in consciousness, you are involved in change. And before we can do something about anything, we have to be able to name it, identify it, be aware that it exists. Oh, let's go back down that rabbit hole. Coloring outside the lines is a fine art. Our attitudes are the crayons that color our world. Oh, more colorful wisdom. Okay, so deep breath. So are you ready to join me on this journey as we look at colorblind or colorful? So can you imagine looking at a beautiful garden? It has flowers with many colors, textures, heights. You know, something tall, something that falls over makes the graceful entry. That's the way it is. If we see that everything is unique. But if we can't see the variations in color because we're colorblind, then we don't see another person's differences or the nuances that make them unique. So if you listen to people talk about race, you'll eventually hear someone say, I don't see race. I'm colorblind, or race doesn't exist because biologically, so we should just ignore it as a way to stop racism. And while this colorblind or race blind ideology might seem like a good attitude, it's not going to do anything to stop racism. And it may do more harm than good. Again, I turn to the internet. Blogger John Greenberg explains that the colorblind approach to race is not an accidental phenomenon. Rather, it's a result of our education, a training that many of us have received. We're taught from an early age that we don't see differences. Oftentimes, you don't see the handicapped person. Oftentimes, you don't see somebody who is obviously disturbed. Let's just ignore that. That's how I was taught. And so many of us were taught from an early age that talking about race, even just acknowledging race, is a no-no. And unfortunately, like so many other things that we were taught, this idea is fraught with problems and pitfalls. And here are a few. So first of all, color blindness invalidates people's identities, causing many people to feel invisible. In the TV show that we love, it's called This Is Us. Jack is a white father, and he tells Randall, his black adopted son, "I don't see color." And Randall replies, "Then you don't see me." Oh, how heartbreaking is it not to be seen by your father? Colorblindness invalidates the racist experience by taking race off the table. Colorblindness pretends the table is empty. So that derails the process of addressing racism before it's even started, the process of addressing oppression before it's even started. We can't even talk about it because it doesn't exist. I'm reminded of that line in the song, "How high does a sycamore grow? If you cut it down, you'll never know." So colorblindness also equates color with something negative. I don't see color, I just see people. Carries with it an implication that there's a problem. Erica Blackman, who I referred to earlier, likens this to saying, "Oh, I don't see your glasses," to someone who's clearly wearing glasses. And that person may feel that you must think there's something wrong with glasses if you can't even admit to seeing them. So although the idea of colorblindness may be considered as inclusive, with good intentions, the impact is that you don't see a person for who they are. Our differences and our different life experiences make us different from each other. And the concept of colorblindness excludes those differences. So we continue with the garden analogy. There would be only one type of flower in the garden without any variation in color. Oh, by the way, 1 million colors. That's how many colors the human eye can see. Oh, and what color is the wind? Blue. Yeah, I know these things. What color are mirrors? Oh, let us reflect on this. What does a colorful answering machine telephone sound like? No, sorry, I got that wrong. What does answering a colorful telephone sound like? Green, 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 yellow. What do you call a multicolored sea cow? Humanity. And what do you do if a purple elephant and a multicolored horse are following you? Get off the merry-go-round. And so that's what we're doing today. We're getting off the merry-go-round. So let's look at this idea from the science of mind point of view. So you may know when this happens, I go back to Ernest Holmes. So I'm going into the Science of Mind textbook, and this is what Ernest Holmes tells us there. He says, in our teaching is that we actually have a body, that we actually have a subjective life, and that we are actually a spirit. So body, soul, spirit represent a point where that individuality is accented in universality. So we are a point in that universal. It's only through this conception that we arrive at the consciousness of the unity of the whole. In other words, if I have one mind and you have one mind and God has another mind, they're three separate minds. I can't talk with you, you can't talk with you, you can't talk with God. If your mind and my mind were not the same, we would have no way by which to communicate with each other. And so Ernest Holmes comes to the conclusion, thus we're forced to the conclusion that there is but one mind. Oh, but here's the important part. Each individual, however, is a unique variation in the universe. No two people are alike, and yet all people are rooted in that which is identical. No two people are alike, and yet all people are rooted in that which is identical. So religious science teaches that each person is a unique expression of God created with sacred worth. I have a quote on my refrigerator from Martha Graham. I love this quote. There is a vitality, a life force and energy, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there's only one of you in all time, this expression is unique. It was true for Martha Graham. She says it's true for me. I'm going with it. So oneness is not sameness. In Beverly Hills Lectures, Ernest Holmes tells us unity and uniformity are not the same thing. No two blades of grass are alike. So colorblind ideologies are problematic because they ignore our uniqueness. And some people might even refer to this as spiritual bypass. Spiritual bypass is not recognizing that there is something happening and just going directly to, oh, everything is cool, everything, is wonderful. That is what Ernest Holmes calling peace when there is no peace. But we need to look at what is behind that. So unity is oneness, not sameness. And people are different, and pretending that they aren't denies us of what makes us the distinct expression of creative spirit that we are. So unless we really understand the differences, we'll never develop the oneness. If we only keep drifting towards people like ourselves, towards sameness, then we don't get to the oneness. We just lump ourselves together. Kind of like lumpy gravy. That's not really what you want. We could learn a lot from crayons. This is from Robert Fulghum. We could learn a lot from crayons. Some are sharp, some are pretty, some are dull, others are bright, some have weird names, but they all have learned to live together in the same box. So we go back to the garden as a metaphor for diversity, inclusion, oneness. It explains a lot. Imagine a garden containing various vegetation, fruit, vegetables, flowers, foliage, trees, everything. Kind of like my backyard, except there's no vegetables right now. All vegetation needs a conducive environment to flourish. A suitable pH, a healthy level of aeration, and sound nutrients. I don't treat my cactus and my tomatoes the same way. Well, I did once, but I don't have any tomatoes anymore. So while all plants need sun, shade, nutrients, soil, water, care, different plants require different mixtures of these elements to thrive. And some need shade, I find this out. Some need shade, others need more sun. Some need moist soil, some thrive in drier soil. I don't know how many cactus I've killed with overwatering. Perhaps you have too. So I don't treat my cactus and my tomatoes the same way. I don't treat the people that I meet the same way. I meet them where they are. I have to look at what is the need here? How can I fill this need? I'm thinking about, when we treat for people, we don't do the same treatment for each person. It's always different. It's always unique. It's always right to what that person is experiencing in this moment, right to the truth that is behind what is there. Oh, and by the way, gardening tip, if you're having a hard day, but you have some new plants, just think about them. They're rooting for you. So people, although we're the same biologically speaking, we have different needs, interests, life experience, circumstances. And so treating people equitably means meeting them where they are rather than treating them all the same. So we see the difference, we appreciate the difference, we value the difference, we value the beautifully unique flower that is each one of us. Even flowers of the same variety have uniqueness in them. And so we value that. So again, the infinite isn't infinite. The infinite is indeed infinite. And that within this one, there is ample room for individual expressions. So Ernest Holmes tells us, each is rooted in the whole, and the divine nature manifests through everything. Through everything. The spontaneity, he didn't say through everything twice. The spontaneity of our inner perceptions, which enable us to know truth, either through experiment or intuition, is ample guarantee that humanity is akin to divinity. And here's the piece, and that within each and every person, God is concealed, waiting to be revealed through purpose, thought, and act. Waiting to be revealed through purpose, thought, and act. So we're connected in so many ways. We're connected with those that are different from us. We're connected even when we assume that because somebody doesn't believe the same thing or look like us, they can't possibly be connected to us. We assume separation, and people who disagree draw lines in the sand rather than hearing the other person out, rather than listening. People with different worldviews never share coffee or lunch. It seems that too often we think that to be the same, we have to be the same to be together. We have to be colorblind, or that we cannot be together at all. And that's not true. Ernest Holmes tells us that there's one spirit incarnated in everyone. One spirit in everyone. We are all bound together in the unity of God. So there's this great diversity in nature, but it's the same life. It's the same life within us all. The diversity lies within our expression. The sameness is in that source. So we shouldn't assume that we all think alike, believe alike, pray, sing, dress alike, talk alike, or behave in the same way. In fact, we are challenged to embrace the differences, the disagreements, and the uniqueness, because that kind of inclusivity is what oneness is all about. So it doesn't make any difference if people don't think like us. Again, from the Science of Mind magazine, our religious outlook is a universal one. There's tolerance in its concept and inclusion. We know this. We work in harmony with all religious beliefs, since each in its own way seeks the ultimate cause. God, the Father which art in heaven, the one who understands the science of mind, will be tolerant, kind, and sympathetic. The one who understands the science of mind will be tolerant, kind, and sympathetic. There's a story about a great religious leader who learned of a holy man who prayed prayers of gratitude just constantly. And the holy man lived on an island far away, but the religious leader was determined to visit him. So when he arrived on the island, he found a poor fisherman. And the fisherman was praying prayers of gratitude. And the leader, who obviously knew more the correct way to pray, decided to teach the man the way to pray. So the man listened patiently and then repeated the words the leader had taught him. And finally, the holy man humbly thanked the leader, and the leader boarded his boat to return home. And as he was on the boat, he was just thinking to himself what a fine service he had done. And then he turned toward the island with a look of astonishment, and there, walking on the water, he saw the fisherman approaching the boat. And when he got within hearing distance, he shouted to the religious leader, "Excuse me, sir. It seems I've forgotten some of the words. Could you instruct me again?" And the religious leader was dumbfounded. He said, "Oh." He found his voice and he said, No, forget what I taught you. Just go on praying as you're used to doing." So if we're really interested in imbuing oneness, we need to be with other people who are different, and we need to be humble. We need some cultural humility. For example, when we were visiting a foreign country, say France, where the customs are very different than what we're used to, and the language is different, and some of the things they do are not only different, but a little uncomfortable. Like they have the les bis, where you kiss on both cheeks and sometimes 3 times, and you don't know. And they don't know either, by the way, so that's okay. So anyhow, as a guest, it's not for us to say that, that's a really silly thing to do. Or, like driving on the left side of the road in Britain, you don't want to go against that, because that would not be a pretty sight. Instead, our role is to learn, to pay attention, to understand how things work, and to adapt. And it's our role as a guest in a country, not to insist they let us do things however we want to do them. It's our role as a guest to pause and consider what we're doing. So we have to develop and appreciate these cross-cultural relationships, and it's to everybody's benefit. And so we need to be able to examine ourselves and reach out to the community. And sure, when everybody comes to the table, it can be very messy. There'll be differences of opinion, and yet everybody has something to add. If we cut the sycamore down, we'll never know how high it will grow. So a blessing awaits us all, and it will come when we experience the richness of racial and cultural diversity. Referring back to the garden, I found this quote: "The most delicate flower is still a badass. It sucks food from roots, stares at the sun and basks in it, and it wrestles with the wind and it drinks the rain." So what is mine to do? How am I to show up? How do I choose to show up? So a new favorite quote from Dr. Maya Angelou: "The thing to do, it seems to me, is to prepare yourself so you can be a rainbow in somebody else's cloud. Somebody who may not look like you, somebody who may not call God the same name you call God, if they call God at all." She says, "I may not dance your dances or speak your language, but be a blessing to somebody." That's what I think. So Dr. Angelou continues, she says, "I always carry rainbows with me. I bring everyone who has ever been kind to me," she said, "black, white, Asian, Spanish-speaking, Native American, gay, straight, everybody." She says, "Come on with me. I'm going on stage. Come with me. I need you now." And she encourages people to apply that rainbow in the clouds philosophy to their own lives. Of course, for us, rainbow has a very special meaning, and if we could only be that rainbow, that would be fantastic. This is what she said, though: "Remember, the thing to do, it seems to me, is to prepare yourself so you can be a rainbow in somebody else's cloud, somebody who may not look like you." So once you see this systemic racism, oppression, you can't unsee it. It's like a stereogram. Remember, we used to stare at these strange 2D pictures, and all of a sudden something would emerge from it. You know, maybe there was a horse hidden in there, or a teapot or something. And then once you saw it that way, it's hard to look back and not see it. So that's the deal. And since we made this up, we can unmake it. Whatever we've learned, we can unlearn. So the Sufi teacher tells us this: "Past the seeker as he prayed came the crippled and the beggar and the beaten. And seeing them, he cried, 'Great God, how is it that a loving creator can see such things and yet do nothing about them?' And God said, 'I did do something. I made you.'" So as Melody Hobson says in her TED Talk, let us be color brave, not color blind. Because without such bravery, director Ava DuVernay confirms, you're missing out on a lot of beautiful colors. And so I return to the affirmation today. I see the colorful, wonderful, and mystical variances that are expressed uniquely as each of us. So let us take that into our contemplation, into our moment of prayer as we go within, and recognizing that there is something greater than we are that is happening here. There is something greater than this breath that I'm breathing. It is a communal breath. It is a breath everywhere, present in every person. It is this very thing called life itself. It is what gives us the energy. It is what brings us to this moment. It is in every person, every place, every situation, all the time. It is love, it is light, it is harmony. It is joy. And I claim it right here, right now, for each and every one of us, that joy of life. And in this, I know that there is a perfect love surrounding each and every person, and that this manifests in divine right relationships with the people that we're confined with the people that we Zoom with the people who are in our atmosphere, who are in our universe. One life, one love, one life, one love. So knowing that love permeates all that is, I also know that this human body that we live in is the body of God. It is the temple of spirit. And as such, there is perfection within it. There's a wholeness within it. And so right now, I declare and accept that this perfect health manifests in and through each and every person in the sound of my voice. Whether it be an ache or a pain, or a tightness, or a stretch, or a discomfort, or an illness. I simply know that the truth behind that is perfect God, perfect health. And so I come into alignment with that. And I know also the prosperity of this world that we live in, that there is more than enough to go around. That there is more than enough. This is brought home to me every time I see a tree, an acorn, a leaf. There is more than enough. And so I know that this is now spread throughout this world equitably, that each person has exactly what it is they need for the next breath, and for the next breath, and for the next breath, as we share, as we give, as we accept everything that we need. And so knowing love, knowing health, knowing prosperity, I know that there is a perfect work in the world, that there is a perfect action, there is a perfect purpose for each and every person. And I recognize right now that living that purpose in alignment with spirit is a gift. And so I accept that gift. And I accept it for each and every person. There is valuable, important, and specialized work for each and every person to do. Sometimes that work is a smile. Sometimes that work is running a Zoom meeting. Sometimes that work is praying with people. Sometimes that work is writing a note of appreciation. There is perfect work, and we do our work. And so knowing that this is God in action, I just give thanks. This is fantastic. This is wonderful. This is all there is. I know that it's good. And so I can release it. I can let it go. I can rest in the knowing that as I release this word into that law, the law has already echoed the yes. And I invite you to echo that yes as well and join me by saying, and so it is.